All right, here we go. Let's break down the 2024 Christchurch Marathon, where I ran a personal best of 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 36 seconds. So if you haven't seen the race day video, you can watch it here. Probably worth watching this before you watch this video. And if you haven't seen the other 12 episodes of the series, you can find the full playlist linked below. So let's start with the week before the marathon. So the final week of the taper. Monday, I had a 45-minute easy run, and then on Tuesday was a rest day. Now, this week was always going to be interesting. We actually had booked 3 video shoots up in Auckland for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, which in my head was definitely not ideal. I knew that it was going to probably be somewhat challenging, both from them being rather strenuous on the body as you're on your feet for the majority of the time, plus sleeping arrangements in Auckland are not that ideal, and I just knew that it wasn't going to be the most ideal setup in the lead up to the marathon, as well as also being able to carb load properly. So on the Wednesday, I flew to Auckland. I actually had a workout to do that day, which was sort of like the last of the speed work. It was basically just 15 minutes at tempo. But flew into Auckland. We had a 1 p.m. call time for our first shoot, which was with New Balance. That went from 1 until 5 p.m. And then I had decided that I was going to go do the session at the track that night, which was near Tyler's house, which is my business partner in Auckland. But what I didn't realize until afterwards was that it was the junior track night, and they were going to be on the track until 7:30. So by the time we actually got to the track, it was already 8 o'clock. It was about a 40-minute session, 10 to 15-minute warm-up, 15 minutes at tempo. Then I had some strides, and then a 10-minute cool-down. Tyler actually came out, filmed some clips of that, which was pretty cool on the FX6. But by the time I actually got home from that session, it was already about 9 o'clock. And I think most people know if you sort of run that late at night and then try and go to sleep, it's a little bit hard because you're pretty jacked up and hyped up from the run itself. So that night I actually had a pretty average sleep going into Thursday. And I was also sleeping on an air mattress, which had a leak in it. So I'd wake up in the middle of the night and sort of be like, I guess like cocooned by this thing, and I'd have to pump it back up. So the sleep on Wednesday night was not ideal. In hindsight, I should have done that Wednesday workout in the morning before I left to go to Auckland, because my flight wasn't until 8:45 a.m. So I definitely could have done it in the morning. But hindsight being 2020, I guess. Thursday morning we had another late call time, so we weren't kicking off until 1, although we had to drive to Hamilton, which was about an hour and a half out of Auckland. So that morning I did 40 minutes easy, just around the waterfront, and then we went back, got all of our gear ready, and then we drove down to Hamilton. So Thursday was the day that I was starting the carb load, and like I said earlier, I knew it was going to be hard to get in a proper carb load while I was away in Auckland on the road, etc. So I made sure to come prepared, and I had a pretty solid plan of what I was going to do. So along with eating my normal diet with, I would say, increased carbs here and there. So like the morning of Thursday, I had 2 bagels and a banana, so that really upped my carbs early on. But I came with me basically with a 12-pack of these Morton 225 solid Cs, and so the plan was to eat 3 of these throughout each day. So each of these is 44 carbs, so that is 132 grams of carbs just from these. And then I was also going to sip on throughout the day 2 of the Morton 320 drink mix. These are 80 grams of carbs each. So between 3 of these and 2 of these a day, I was just under 300 grams of carbs, which was ideal. So I was aiming for 600 per day. So I was basically getting 300 from these, and then an additional 300 from like my typical diet, which I sort of bumped up here and there, like I said, by throwing in an extra bagel, a banana, a few muffins, etc. So that Thursday shoot was actually with Camille French, who was one of New Zealand's fastest women's marathon runners. So it was quite cool to obviously get to chat to her about her experience. She's going to the Paris Olympics to run the marathon. So yeah, always fun to sort of just be around someone who is obviously in the space and an elite at the sport that I'm obviously super interested in. So that was really cool. Finished up that shoot at about 5 p.m. We stayed in Hamilton that night to have dinner, and then we didn't get back to Auckland until about 9 p.m. Again, had a really average sleep on that Thursday night, which was not ideal, but I knew that my sleep on Friday night was the most important, because the sleep the day before the marathon is usually the one that's the most important to get in. Friday was the last day in Auckland. We had one more shoot. That was a 10 a.m. start, 10 till 2, and then it was a rest day from running, so there was no running involved. Again, continued to fuel with the 320s and these, as well as eating the normal diet. So our shoot finished up at 2 p.m. We went straight we're basically down in the Auckland Viaduct to the airport. I had a 5:15 p.m. flight, got home to Christchurch at 7:30 p.m. And then for dinner that night we had, it's called katsubi. It's basically like a build your own sort of donbori bowl. So I just had, I literally only had rice and chicken, and then got a relatively early night that night, which was well and truly needed. So Saturday morning, we were hosting a shakeout run. When I say we, the Floor 12 Run Club, along with another run club, which is another run club here in Christchurch, and Lululemon. So that started at 8 a.m. We were basically doing an out and back 5K, so 2.5K out, 2.5K back. And I reckon we had about 120 people turn up to that, which was epic. Obviously, a lot of people running the 10K, half, full marathon. We had some people come in from Sydney, some people from Melbourne. So there's people from all over the place coming to the shakeout run before the race on Sunday. And then straight from the shakeout run, we went to pick up our race day bibs from the expo, which was actually at the finish line this year, which is at Hagley Park, which probably worked out better because there's obviously way more space for people to be able to get in and get out easy enough. Last year it was held at the Colombo Mall, and there was definitely a bit of congestion there, but having it at the park was just easier to be able to pick up our bibs. There was a few of us that went straight from the shakeout run to the bib pickup.
So, he's going to run 250 tomorrow.
Hopefully.
This is Mack. He's going to run 315, maybe 310. See how we go.
One of them being Sophie Hicks.
I'm running the quarter marathon tomorrow. It'll be fun. I'm nervous. Bye.
Who was also known as Shix. She ran the women's 10K and won that. So congratulations to Sophie. That day basically just went home and did nothing. I actually edited that video you may or may not have seen. I'll link it up here or down below, called The Final Stretch, which was sort of a bit of like a hype piece before the marathon itself. And that was really good because, to be honest, once I sort of get locked in on a project, I don't really think about anything else. I'm sort of like full tunnel vision. So it actually took away the stress of what was going to be the following day, which was obviously going to be the marathon. And then that night, my parents were in town to watch me run the next day. And so they came over and they brought dinner with them. And we had, again, I had another donbori bowl. So it was chicken, rice, and veggies. I decided to just take off all of the veggies because I couldn't be arsed dealing with the fiber, and just had chicken and rice that night. And then I was in bed by 8 p.m. The main thing there is I decreased carbs on the Saturday to about 300 grams, where Thursday, Friday I had done 600, sort of going off the fact that they would sort of need about 24 hours for them to metabolize and for me to actually be able to use them. So made sure to get in good carbs in the morning because I knew that those would then cross over to race day, and then basically anything in the afternoon. Just kept it pretty normal. I drank a 320 drink mix again that night. But I also think that the copious amounts of carbs were messing with my sleep because my body was just working so hard to try and metabolize those and turn them into energy. So decreased carbs that night. I was in bed by 8 p.m. and that night I actually had one of the best sleeps. I woke up the next morning. Sleep score was good. HRV was good. So seeing all of that was a good way to start the morning because I was obviously quite anxious on race morning. So race day kit, I have the majority of it here. I wore the CLE Go cap, which is my white running cap. I'd previously worn a black one last year and found that obviously when the sun hits it, it gets quite hot. So I ended up taking it off in the first lap. So decided to go with the white one this year, and then I wore a pair of Oakley Radar EV Path sunglasses just in case the sun came out, but ended up ditching those. In terms of the tops, Lululemon kindly printed us some Floor 12 race kit before the marathon, so shout out to Lululemon. So this is the singlet. This is the this is the fast and free race length singlet. So it's got our logo on the front, and then on the back it says Christchurch Marathon. It was alright. I found that it's probably a little bit loose on my upper body, so it was sort of slipping to one side, which was not ideal. I probably wouldn't race in it again. I'm still looking for like a good race day singlet. The Nike Aero Swift one I don't like it. This one's average. The ones from Tracksmith look pretty good. But anyway, and then I wore, these are the Lululemon Fast and Free 6-inch shorts, which have a built-in liner, which meant that I could hold all my gels in those. And then these are the Features Mini Crew sock, something like that. And then for shoes, Saucony Endorphin Elite. So that morning of, I had breakfast, which was the typical breakfast which I would eat throughout the whole of the marathon block, especially on long run days and workout days and whatever. So I had crumpets with some jam. I had another Morton 320. Basically half of my system is Morton 320 at this point. And then I had a solid C as well. So I was sitting at about 100 grams of carbs for the morning. One thing I found was I was like super nervous this year and found it really hard to get my breakfast down. Very, very nervous. Nervous to the point where I don't really feel like eating because it's making me nauseous, but I know that I need to. And actually mixed in with the Precision, mixed in with the Morton, I had a 500 milligram sodium tablet from Precision Hydration. So yeah, like I said, very nervous, very nauseous. Found it really hard to get the food down. I actually had to do a 10-minute meditation to try and calm myself down, which I know when I have to do that, I am feeling super anxious. So that was not an ideal way to start the morning. But once I managed to get all my food down and we were on the way to the course, everything sort of started to calm, and I felt a bit more relaxed and a bit more hyped up. Race day fuel for the day. So I had talked previously in early episodes about using the BPM products. I actually ran out and didn't get enough in time to be able to use them for race day. So that's why you're seeing so much Morton products. I actually went back to Morton, which I'd used throughout the block, and I knew that these worked for me, so it wasn't really like a last minute switch. So I had 7 gels, 6 for the race, 1 for 30 minutes before. These are the Gel 100s, 24 grams of carbs. And then I had a Nathan handheld flask, which had 4/5 of one of these drink mixes, as well as a 500 milligram sodium tablet from Precision Hydration. So in that handheld flask alone, I had 64 grams of carbs and 500 milligrams of sodium. And then in the pocket of my shorts, I had about 8 salt tablets, which were 400 milligrams of sodium each. And the plan was basically to take one every hour, and then I had backups because in previous years I didn't have backups, and I dropped one and then one split in my pocket. So better to have more than less. And then also So I gave the handheld flask went to my wife Sam, who was on course, and then I also gave her a backup gel just in case I needed that as well. So arriving at the race, we left home at about 6:40 a.m. with the race start being at 7:30, and that was way too late. I didn't realize this year, but there'd been a 30% increase in runners from previous years before, and I found last year it was like you could sort of rock up late-ish, be able to get to the toilet, drop your bag, do all those things. But with the increase in runners this year, was definitely harder to do all of that. And in hindsight, we shouldn't have left that late, but we did. So basically, I wouldn't say we were scrambling, but I was sort of definitely behind. I got there, had planned to go to the toilet. Obviously, not a chance that was happening. And they actually started moving all of the runners into the corral at 7 a.m. Luckily, we are like a 5-minute Lime scooter from the start line, so we ended up getting there about 10 to 7. But I basically had to put on my kit, take off my tracksuit. Sam went and took my bag to the bag drop, which was ideal. She said that it was an absolute nightmare, so I probably wouldn't have like made it to where I needed to be if she hadn't have done that. I went and did a quick 10 to 15 minute warm up, got in some strides, found a place to go to the toilet, and then made my way back into the corral. And luckily, I found Dorian, who comes to Run Club, good friend of mine. He said before the race that he was going to try and run around that 3:15 time so that we should run together. Luckily, I found him. I also bumped into another guy called Blair, who said he'd been watching the channel. So it's always a nice way to start the race before you get going. And yeah, last thing I forgot to mention there, I had Gel 100 at 7 a.m, so 30 minutes before the start. So the race plan was to always go out at marathon race pace, which was 4:37 per kilometre, which is about 7:26 per mile. It's a pretty flat course, a pretty consistent course. You're running 4 10.5K loops, and there's no point in exerting yourself too early on and then not having enough juice later in the race to bring it home. So that was always the race plan, to just go out at marathon pace and stick to that. I had my Garmin 965 set up to go off every 5 kilometers. So I'd get a 5 kilometer split. And then I had one of the screens set up to be just my average pace. And then I had a 30-minute timer set up for nutrition to make sure to take my gels. So with the race start, we went out pretty easy to start. That first sort of 1 kilometer is basically just don't really look at the watch, try and find a rhythm, and then once you're moving, sort of assess where you're at. And I think I ran that first kilometer at about a 4:38 pace. I think the one thing that I'm really good at now, and because I've run a few races, and I also feel like it's because I put so much time and energy into training for these things, and then having a specific goal time, is like not jeopardizing any of that work by going out too hot early on. I feel like a lot of people do that, and I'm unsure why. I get why it can happen, because like the excitement of the race, etc., etc. But what you've got to learn is that the marathon's a long race, and you just have to sit back early on, stay on pace, not get too excited, not get too overwhelmed, stay calm, and basically just go into autopilot for those sort of like first 25 to 30 Ks. Because yeah, it's pretty boring. I decided to run without headphones, which is what I always do. It basically allows me to be able to stay in the moment, stay in check with myself and what's happening, and not sort of let what I'm doing be drowned out by music or whatever's going on. So our first 5K split was 23:09, which was 4:38 per kilometre pace, or 7:28 per mile pace. So we're about a second off per kilometre through the first 5K split. And then as we come through our first 10K official split time, that was a 46:35, which is a 4:39 per kilometre average pace, or a 7:29 per mile pace. So through that first 10K, we were actually already 20 seconds off pace. And there's a clip of me checking my phone to see that split, because at that time I'd sort of figured out that my 5K splits on my watch weren't matching up with sort of, 5:10 on the course.
Looking real strong, lads, looking real strong.
What's the I think we're my watch in race.
My watch was like a little bit in front, so say we ran through the 5K, but my watch was saying 5.2K. So I knew what we were running on my watch wasn't an accurate time of what we were actually running based on the course. So I checked my 10K split and then realized that we're about 20 seconds off pace through the first 10K. And so at that point we made a pretty conscious effort to not pick up the pace, but we knew we needed to run 4:35s for at least the next 10K to sort of try and cut back on some of that time. And that wouldn't be, running too hard. It wouldn't be exerting too much energy. So I felt that was relatively manageable. So 15K split was 23 flat, which is 4:36 per kilometre, or 7:24 per mile. And then so at the 15K mark, I grabbed the handheld flask from my wife, Sam. And the plan there was that in previous races, I definitely hit the wall around that 32, 35K mark, a mix between muscular endurance and my body just breaking down, not being used to the mileage, etc., as well as I think not having enough fuel, not necessarily while on course, but enough banked up from proper carb loads, etc. I remember the New York City one was a nightmare. It was like we basically spent the Saturday trying to stuff as much food into our face. So the idea with this was that I knew if I could get in sort of that 65 grams of carbs at around that point of the race, around 15 to 20K, then I knew that would then help me later on in the race, because doing that flask in that 30-minute period was basically the equivalent of doing 2 gels, as well as getting 500 milligrams of sodium in too. So I grabbed that at about the 15K mark and then passed it on to my dad at about 21Ks after I'd finished it.
Great fathering. How are you, bud? Good, yourself? Yeah. How's he doing? He's good.
And I think that massively helped throughout the rest of the race and helped carry me home towards the end when I was getting a bit more fatigued. So we went through the half marathon time, 1:37:57. So again, projected time there was around 3:16. So we're about 30 seconds off pace still during that point. But my 15 to 20K, 5K split was 22:54, which is a 4:35 to 7:23 mile pace. So we had picked it up at that point. Heading into the third lap, I got passed by my coach, Andy Good, at the 27K mark. He was obviously running the full marathon. He was on his last lap. I was on my third lap. And I knew he was going for a big PB that day. And a PB should also give him the win. So when he passed me, he made sure to try and give him heaps and sort of just keep pushing him through that last, he would have been in sort of like the last 5K of that race. So at this point, still feeling relatively good, in control, everything's pretty normal. It's me and Dorian still going at it, and our 20 to 25K split was 22:47, which is a 3:34 per kilometre pace, 7:21 per mile. So we definitely started to pick up the pace here. So we went through the official 31.6K split at 2:26:26. And then heading into that final lap, I was feeling super good, like way better than I had felt throughout marathons prior. Christchurch last year, through that 33K mark, I hit the wall, body just did not have it to continue running at that pace. New York City, a similar thing, 32K mark, just body hit the wall, couldn't continue running at the pace I needed. But there's a point, probably with about 8 or 9 kilometers to go, where last year I saw my family, and I just didn't have enough juice left. You could see how sort of lethargic I was looking as I turned through this corner.
Woohoo! Yay! Go Mack! Woo!
And this time around, when I went around that corner, I just felt so good. And I let out a big, let's go. There's a clip of me doing that.
Come in! Ding, 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 ding! Go Mack!
And it was at that point that I knew, with like 8 or 9K to go, that if I could continue this pace for the remainder of the race. And I think when I did that, my family also knew that we were on there. And you can just sort of hear like my mum, just like, as I go, she goes too. It's like she sort of matched my energy, which was quite amazing. So there was a few sayings that I was using throughout the race, some early on and then a few towards the end. The main ones here being like to obviously stop myself from going out too hot, which was like, what feels good now won't feel good later. So although we're 20 Ks in and you're running, 4:35 pace or whatever that is, that's not going to feel the same at the 40K mark. So it's just make sure that you're not exerting too much energy. You're running sort of within your means, I guess, and just a way for me to be able to check in on it. Another one being just like, don't chase it. So I guess a good example of that is that in that 10K, like we were obviously down by 20 seconds, but it's like, don't go in the next 5K and run 22 minutes and try and make up that time then now. Like you've got time, don't chase it. It'll come, the race will come to you eventually. And then sort of the last one towards the end where Dorian and I were sort of like, things were starting to set in and get a little bit painful, was stay in the fight. So just continue pushing regardless of how you feel. Like you've worked so hard for this. There's no point sort of giving up now. If you can stay in the fight, you're gonna be good. So our 30 to 35K 5K split was 22:42, which was 4:32 per kilometer, 7:18 per mile. This was the fastest of the race throughout the whole race. And it just sort of proves that like all of that training that I had done basically from New York City, after we finished New York City, we just continued working all the way through and putting so much mileage on our legs that, I had that muscular endurance to be able to run those paces that late in the race. So super stoked with that. So the last 5K of the race were definitely, obviously a bit of a battle. We somehow managed to form there was probably like a little bit of a group of us, like 5 or 6. We were sort of all together running through that last 5K of the race. And no one said anything to each other. We just all sort of managed to just obviously all be running the same sort of pace. And we obviously all ended up together. I obviously had a spare gel because I didn't take one through that 15 to 20K mark because I had done the soft flask. I decided to do another gel 15 minutes after doing my last one, or my 5th one. So I did that because I felt like my body could take it on, and I had it, and I was like, oh, it can't hurt having more carbs in the system, surely. So I just did that. Heading into that last 5K, I was doing some mental math, knowing that the course was running slightly long on my GPS. And I knew that if I maintained running at the pace that I was running at, which was a little bit below marathon pace at this point, which was 4:36 per kilometer, I was going to be good to obviously go under 3:15. But what I realized later on, which I'll explain, was I was actually a lot closer to it than what I thought. So the 35 to 40K split was 22:58, which was 4:36 per kilometer, or 7:24 per mile. So we had definitely dropped off the pace at that point. Not majorly, like we were still running under marathon pace, but because of the start and how that went, we definitely didn't have a lot of time to play with. So as you can tell, I'm a little bit sick post race, and my throat is super dry. This is a mango LaCroix. I didn't even know he sold these in New Zealand. So with 2.5K to go, again, body is feeling pretty good. The one thing that I probably always struggled with, and this will be the big focus sort of heading into winter now as we sort of build towards what's coming next, is my calf strength. It's more hereditary than it is anything. Like our family just have naturally small calves. And so the only thing really hurting at this point is my calves. Everything else is sweet. But the last 2.5K to go, we just start to enter Hagley Park, and it's at this point I sort of just go and leave Dorian behind. Sorry, Dolls. But I knew that like we could finish strong, and I'd never felt this good late in a race. So it's like it's only 2.5Ks of running. You can push as hard as you need to get to this point. And so my 42nd kilometer, I ran the fastest of the entire race, which was a 4:28. And then the last 600 meters, we're just pushing super hard. I say 600 meters because it should be 200. But like I've said, the course was long. There's so many corners throughout the course. I think if you take them wrong, it's sort of going to add distance to your race. And I think that's what happened with me. Or the course is just long because to be fair, everyone's watch was long on the course. So yeah, 200 meters to go down the final chute. I can hear Jim, who is a friend of mine. He comes to our run club, and he's just saying like, I think he's just screaming like, "Get there! You gotta go! You gotta go!" And what I don't realize at this point is that everyone's sort of watching the clock tick down on the finishing banner. And so I'm just full sprint at this point. Graham luckily catches up with me. He's got the camera, so he shoots that epic shot of me coming through the finish. And I'm just full send down the finishing chute. There's so many people yelling my name from different points of the course. My family's early on. Got some friends further up. I have like really terrible eyesight, so I don't even bother looking at the clock on the thing because I can't see it from like 100 meters out anyway. And it's not until I'm at the very last second where I look up and I'm just about to cross the finish line, and it says, it literally clicks over from 3:14:59 to 3:15 flat just as I go over the finish line, and I know at that point that I've done it because I obviously didn't start straight away when the time started. I was about 30 seconds back. But what I didn't realize at that point was how close it actually was to me being under 3:15. I sort of thought with like 5K to go that I could run. I thought I'd banked a lot more time than that. Again, stupidly, because I was sort of like going off my watch. But I thought I could sort of run around 4:45 to 4:50 pace and still get home under 3:15. I ran that last 600 meters at 4:08 pace, which was obviously the fastest throughout the race, and finished in a time of 3:14:36. So I had 24 seconds to play with, which over a marathon distance is really nothing. It's less than a second per kilometer, but we did it. And it's the first time that I've actually set out with a goal marathon time and actually been able to hit it. My first one in Hawke's Bay, 2021, I wanted to run under 4 hours. I ran 4:29. Christchurch last year, I wanted to run under 3:20. I ran 3:28. New York City last year, I wanted to run under 3:30. I ran 3:39. And then finally Christchurch this year, I wanted to run under 3:15, and I ran 3:14:36. So that in itself was like a huge achievement to be able to not only set a goal, but like set a goal, put it out publicly to so many people, create a whole series around it, and then actually be able to go out and do that. That in itself was obviously really rewarding. The first person I saw when I crossed the finish line was my coach Andy. He gave me a high five and a hug, and I'm pretty sure I just said to him, like, how did you go? Because I knew that, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, you know, his race was obviously super important to him, as well as my performance too, because he was obviously so invested in that. And I think I just said, like, I think I did it, and he said, you did it. And and then he went on to say something about, like, that's cutting it real fine, boy, or something along those lines. And then I said something about the GPS, and I think it was just like a really cool way to finish that moment. Like we'd started together, we'd been working on that goal basically since we finished New York, and then for him to be the first one there at the finish line after I finished was really epic. And then from that point, it was just like a mix of a whole bunch of other people coming up and saying congratulations. I saw my friend Connor from Melbourne. He just ran his debut marathon, ran 2:46, which was rapid. I had some other people come up to me and just say congratulations. They'd seen the video series. Dorian finished about 30 seconds after me. And then obviously went and saw my family who, my parents had travelled from up north to come and watch. So I saw my wife, Sam, who was probably sick of running at that point. And then like my sister and my cousins. And I don't know, there's nothing really quite like event day or marathon day. Even if you're not running it, like the vibe there is insane, and just being able to see either so many people who have come to Run Club and then, got into running and have now run their first 10K or their first half marathon, or people who have come up to you and said that they've watched the series or seen you a message or something along those lines. Like actually getting to see those people in person and not just numbers on a screen is like really rewarding, I guess. And makes me feel super grateful for sort of everything that's going on and what running has been able to do for not only for me but for other people too. So I guess what's next? I tried to run about 5 or 6 days after the marathon. Felt pretty good. Felt like I was not like good to get back into it, but good to do a few runs here and there. And then ended up with this sort of like nasty head cold, which I've had for about a week. So I've taken the last 3 to 4 days off running, and we'll sort of reassess where we are at tomorrow. But when you spend so much time of your life running, and for me, like obviously the physical benefits that it brings, but the mental ones especially for me, feel quite lost not doing it. So I'm excited to hopefully get over this and then get back into it. I had a call with my coach, Andy, the week after the marathon, and he said this.
And there's definitely a lot more in you. Like, fuck, sub 3 is a genuine thing, eh?
Yeah, we're going sub 3. So yeah, the next real logical step from here is to go sub 3. When I first started running, like the thought of sub 3 is just, it never feels like it could happen. But I feel like the progression of like where I'm leading to and where I'm going, like I reckon I can run sub 3 either by sort of late this year or early next year, with the hopes of then obviously qualifying for Boston, and the goal to be run the Boston Marathon before I turn 30, so that'd be 2026. So yeah, for the meantime, it's sort of get over this head cold and then building up base mileage. I really want to probably be looking to run 10 to 12K every day during this sort of like maintenance period, and I'd like to be able to sort of be hitting that 70 to 80 kilometer a week, not in a prep, just in a maintenance phase, so that way when I go into an actual 12-week block, we can sort of get into that 100, 110K range, which is I think where I'll need to be able to break sub 3. So yeah, it's all really exciting stuff. I guess the last thing from me is like, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much to everyone who has watched the series, supported it, subscribed to the channel, commented, sent me a message on Instagram, commented on Strava, gave me kudos, whatever it is, it really means a lot. And, you know, I hope that I can continue to provide value, whether that be in entertainment or information moving forward. And yeah, this will definitely not be the last you hear from me. I will be back shortly as soon as I can get my legs moving properly again. But yeah, thank you so much for the support. I can't wait to see what 2024 has in store for us. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. So I think I ran 3:39.26, so we'll take it. I officially announced my retirement to marathon running. I'm just going to stick to halves from now on.
4, 3, 2, 1, start!
Go, Mack. Go, Dewar. Go, guys.
Go, Becca.
Come on, Mack. You got this, bro.
Well done.